The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Forge Fitness and Nutrition LLC, the podcast hosts, owners, employees, contractors, partners, or affiliates. This presentation may include the use of explicit language. Listener or viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to the Forge Fitness and Nutrition and Habit podcast. I'm your host, Michael S. Parker. Before we begin today's episode, I just would like to ask those of you in the audience to do something very simple yet powerful. Let's all listen with an open heart, because my guest today is Josif Todorovits. He is someone who has rebuilt his life from a place that most people can't even imagine. He spent years in juvenile detention. He had a long prison sentence and the kind of circumstances that convince many people that their story's written and they're done. Their life is over. But this episode isn't about where Josif started. We're going to talk about it, but it's more about the moment that he chose who he would become. What you're about to hear is a story of discipline that was forged under pressure, a new identity that was rebuilt through purpose, and a man who turned survival into pure service. Josif's journey is absolute fucking proof that your past does not disqualify you from a powerful future, and that real strength is built from the inside out. Don't listen to judge, listen to understand, and maybe listen to recognize what's possible for your own life. And remember that we should all strive every single day to be the best person that we can and remake ourselves, because that's what Forge is all about. You got to melt yourself down. You got to hammer your life to get it just right. Now, before we get into the turning points and the lessons, I just want everyone to meet you, Josif. For someone who's hearing your name for the first time, who are you today?
Wow. I have a couple different slogans. So from pain to prosperity is probably the most important one. I think that we can all relate to pain, whether that's emotional pain, physical pain, loss of love, loss of an occupation. During the pandemic, a lot of people that was in the fitness industry, they kind of strayed away from the fitness industry. So pain to prosperity is something that I thrive for. So you mentioned survive. I used to think that I was good at surviving, but then I took a coaching program when I went through my divorce, and they taught me that I'm more than just surviving, I'm thriving. So I used to be in this survival state. And as men, I think we get into this mode of I'm phenomenal at surviving. I'm hard, I'm tough, especially in prison. You have to survive. And that's what I did in prison. I did survive. But since being out here, I try to teach people that it's more about survival. And it's what can you do to thrive as opposed to just survival. So if that's one big takeaway that you can take from me is that I went from survival through pain to now I'm thriving beyond what I actually wrote down while I was in prison.
I think that thriving is something that we ignore. I think we do get in survival mode. We're very reactive as a species. I think that we look for protection and provision, but we know we have the hierarchy of need. But you really did go through a ringer, and you're a man today who is looking at thriving and rebuilding. Not even that, like divorce is hard, prison is hard, suffering consequences of any decision is challenging. But you really had a pretty good hit on you pretty early on. I know that your family immigrated to the United States. I know a pretty fair amount about you. I know that in your culture it was it's a tough environment, you know. And correct me if I'm wrong, it was Romanian, right?
Yeah, I was born in Timișoara, Romania, and that's where I did my last bodybuilding show. So I hadn't been back in Romania in 41 years, and I qualified for a world show in Romania, and that was the first time that I went back. And I went to go visit both my parents, which are buried there. So yeah, I'm from Timișoara, Romania.
When we talk about where we are today, sometimes we do have to examine the past. So I don't want to dwell on it too much, because this is more about a story of transformation and becoming a leader and somebody who adds significant value, not only to the fitness industry coaches and trainers and people within your sphere of influence, but you've added a tremendous amount of value into other people's lives who are just working to get better. And your life trajectory changed dramatically after the years that you were in and out of your juvenile detention. You had the 12-year prison sentence. Can you walk us through, let's just maybe real quickly hit on the lowest point. And then from that, can you tell us the moment that you decided, I am not letting my past be my legacy?
So are you asking what's the lowest point that I've experienced in life or in prison?
You know what? I'm going to let you decide how you want to answer the question, because I'm sure that no matter what you say, it's going to be valuable.
Wow. I mean, we'd probably have to start back when we came to America. You know, I like to paint just a little bit of a picture to my dad. When we left a communistic country, Nicolae Ceausescu was the president. I didn't really understand the full grasp of what that meant until I went back to Romania and I seen the palace that he built while taking everything from the entire country. We're talking electricity, food. He put so much effort into building this castle as a monument to himself that his ego was so big that it's the second heaviest building in the entire world. And every year the building shrinks. It gets smaller and smaller So they have to constantly rebuild. That was the huge ego, and my dad worked for him. So I didn't know that at the time he was building electrical pathways in a city in Romania called Arad, which my sisters told me a little bit about. So I had to put myself in his shoes. He came from a place where people probably carried a suitcase. He was in the military. He was under communistic rule. So we were well above the norm. We were not the norm if you were in the military back then. This was in the 60s, 70s. I was born in 79. So we're talking years of a certain headspace for a man, not a woman, but a man. And then we come to America and insert me. We moved to Alabama, Texas. And then in 1986, he decides to move to Oak Park, California, Sacramento. So South Sacramento at the time in the 80s and 90s was predominantly African American and Hispanic. I didn't speak English. I didn't know how to read and write until I was 13. I taught myself. So I grew up in ESL classes, English as a second language, with nobody speaking Romanian. So I had to figure a lot of things out on my own. I'm dyslexic. I had a stuttering problem, and I didn't speak the language. And then insert me, and I had to figure my way out with an alcoholic father, very abusive. And at the age of 10, I decided to join a gang because my best friend at the time thought it'd be a good idea for me to join a gang. I had no rhyme or reason. Insert a couple more years. From the age of 12, I spent in and out of juvenile hall up until I went to the California Youth Authority, which was like juvenile prison, which, by the way, doesn't exist in California anymore because they thought it was too dangerous. But that's where I grew up as a teenager. Then I spent about a year and a half out here on the streets, in which I committed a crime, attempted murder, which got me sent to 12 years in prison. The lowest point that I could imagine probably sitting in prison was when I was attacked by my own, what I called friends, because of something that I was alleged happened, but didn't happen on the streets. My rib was dislocated and I didn't seek medical attention because it was an act of cowardice to ask for medical attention, even though my rib was dislocated. I was battered, bruised. And here I sat that for the past, I was in my 21 at the time. So from the time of 10 to 21, I dedicated every ounce of myself to a color, to a street gang. And I'm talking about I committed some pretty heinous crimes, anywhere from shooting, stabbings, anything that you can think of that a gang member participates in, I participated in it. Not because I was forced to, but because that's just the frame of thought that I was in at the time from 10 until 21. And then I get to prison, and at 21, I was attacked. And I'm in this cell where I had maybe like a very, very thin mattress, and I had some ideas and some thoughts, and I was very lost. And I broke, and I thought to myself, I'm 21 years old, and I gave my entire life to a cause that wasn't even real. I mean, I was probably at the lowest place that I can be. The correction officers didn't really care about anything. I didn't really know if I was coming or going. What do? I got a dislocated rib. I'm in so much pain. And I had to sit in that cell, and I had to decide on what path am I going to be at in prison for the rest of my sentence. I'd say that was pretty low. Loss of identity. How about that? That we talk about loss of identity that I deal with a lot out here. You want to talk about betrayal? How about betrayal? Probably the most betrayed I felt in my entire life, because I'm spending 12 years in prison for a cause that now attacked me because of something that I didn't even do, but I didn't understand the politics of prison at the time. I had no idea. I was ignorant. I was young. I was angry. And everybody put me in there but me. No accountability. Wasn't responsible. And all I wanted to do was be violent. And I was in an opportune position to be violent. And guess what I did? I took full advantage of it. And I was very violent for a number of years. You want to take from me and you want to assault me, I'm going to do the same to you. I would probably say that was a turning point when I didn't really know what identity I had. And from that day on, I searched to figure out, what am I going to do now? Because from the time I was 10 until 21, all I did was represent a gang. And I don't mean just represent a gang. I woke up every single day and I looked for violence. I didn't hope that violence wouldn't find me. I intentionally woke up every day and looked for some type of violence. I mean, to the point where recently I am a really, really good friend with a sheriff, and we met under circumstances because I do competitive bodybuilding and I trained his girlfriend. His sergeant at the time seen a picture of me and him on social media, calls him into the office and asks who I was. And he says, well, he's just a friend. This is before he knew my background. He works in South Sacramento, an area that I did a lot of crime in. And his sergeant says, I wanted to know if you knew everything about this individual. And he said, well, I don't know much about him other than he trains my girlfriend and he's a good person. He shows up. He's honorable. Like, I like him. I've invited him to my house. I trust him. And he flips the screen around and my entire rap sheet pops up of, we're talking about crimes that weren't even solved yet. Just a number of different things in Sacramento. And he flips the screen around and says, well, I don't know that person, but I know the person that comes to my house every day. So I don't know who that person is, but I know the person that's in front of me. This is coming from somebody in current law enforcement in an area that he currently works as a cop. So I don't mean that like I was very violent and very destructive is the best way that I can put it. And he can attest to it. And even still, I feel like all of the good that I have done to show who my true character is, even to a law enforcement, says a lot about the night and day on the person that I was to the person that I am now. But that was a very low point in my life, and I'll never forget that point. And it's because of that moment and because of that point that I was so low, and I was all alone. I didn't have anybody. Nobody was coming to rescue me. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have a leader. I didn't have somebody coming to rescuing me, telling me everything's going to be okay. I had to figure this shit out on my own. Because guess what? The rest of them were doing the same thing. So we're all in a cesspool of violence trying to figure out who's going to manipulate who and who's going to die before the...
That sounds like a real low point. Yet something happened in your head from 10, 21. You were indoctrinated into a life of extreme violence. But something happened at some point. Do you remember when that was? Like where you were, you said you were alone, and man, I can speak, I think, for a lot of men. I don't think people understand that for men, like, we carry a heavy burden of performance. It is a very heavy burden. And I think it's just innate to who we are. But at some point, you sitting alone in your cell, or where were you when you finally said, if and when I get out of here, I'm done with this stuff? Like, what happened?
So from the time I was 21, because I was in a level 3, and then I got promoted, as we say, we went to a level 4 in maximum security. And it wasn't that much time that passed, but between 21 after that happened and between this next incident that happened, I think it was only like 3 years. And in that 3-year span, I probably was the most aggressive and the most angry I've ever been in my entire life, in the most opportune place to take full advantage of it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we don't have an opportunity to get violent and be surrounded with violence, but in prison, there you go. You have a very angry young man that feels betrayed, feels abused, feels neglected from his parents, from his father, now from his current friends, and he still has to play this role because it's just a life that I lived for so long. So I would probably say my next turning point would have to be in the cell where I was asked to remove a person from the yard, and it was just me and him. It was a rotunda. Rotunda opens up, my cell door opens up, and this individual was supposed to come in. I was supposed to assault this individual by any means necessary, so physical, murder, whatever it took, just to get this individual off the yard. The problem was it was just me, an open door, and the gunner. So if you do the math, the gunner can see directly to the room, so I had to wait for the door to shut. I mean, 2 people come out, 1 person comes out, and I thought to myself, I can't believe that this is what my life consists of. Basically, gladiator school, where an individual walks up to the cell, says this person has to go. I didn't even second guess it. I didn't ask no questions. There's no time to ask questions. There's a pecking order. It's very militant, and I understood what I had to do because this is the life that I led. Remember, from 10 until I got to prison. Betrayed, it's just part of the process. Then I get to another prison. It's just more violence on top of more violence. And that moment when that person didn't come to the cell and the cell closed, I have no idea why, which is why I'm probably even able to do this podcast. I probably broke down to my knees and I started to cry, and I started to ask myself, I don't understand how I got to this point, but I don't think I'm ever getting out of here. I'm going to die in this cell. I'm going to die around men. I'm never going to see my son. Hell, I'm never going to be able to hold a woman in my entire life. And from that point on, I started playing this role of like, I need to get by prison and I need to participate in as much that I have to so that I don't look like I'm a coward or that I'm afraid. And even from then, I still participated in a lot of violence, a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have been participated in, but it's prison. It's either your life or my life. It is what it is. I'm in prison. I can't go up to somebody and be like, I don't want to be here no more. It is what it is. I fucked up. I'm here. That was probably the biggest turning point in my entire life, but I was still lost and confused because I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have direction. All I had was I didn't want to be here for the rest of my life, and I need to get out there somehow. So I used my son as an anchor, and I used literature and education as a tool to escape, as opposed to drugs, alcohol, and television, like a lot of people in prison do. I didn't want to do everything that everybody else did because I knew that that's where I was going to end up. But because that individual didn't come into my cell, I managed to survive at least that moment where it was a clear indication that there's a gunner, me, and another individual. There's no getting around that. There's nobody else out there. It's clear as day. If I attack somebody or if I murder somebody, we know who did it. It's you because I seen it. On the yard, it's different because you can get away with a lot. But I literally broke. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of here, but I got to get out of here somehow. And I still had an extensive amount of time to do. That was only my 3rd prison. I still had 2 more to go to.
When that happened, you feel like that was the turning point in your psychology? Is that when you started to think about your exit strategy in a positive way?
that's when I started to think about how can I do things that I'm going to do when I get out that's going to have me be productive to some extent. Because prior to that, I didn't know what being productive was. I loved firearms. I loved walking around with weapons. I liked shooting. The first person that I wanted to shoot at 12 was my father. I mean, so I wasn't oblivious to shooting. I wasn't oblivious to shooting at people. I wasn't oblivious to shooting people. I went to prison for attempted murder. Violence wasn't something that I was foreign to. And now you put me in an environment where that's all we do is breed violence. We don't breed positive. We don't breed a positive state of mind. We breed this person has to go one way or another by death or by wheelchair, but he has to go. I've seen that many times. Seeing somebody get thrown off the tier. I mean, death was just very, very common. It wasn't uncommon. Another person died. I was next to two individuals. I woke up to gurgling and fighting and one man killing another man. It's a very, very interesting sound, the gurgling of somebody trying to breathe, but blood is in his lungs. It's not a movie. It's things in real life happen much differently than they do in movies. And much differently than you do when two men get into an argument and one man socks another man. I've seen levels of violence where the socking doesn't stop. There is no socking in the face. It's somebody socking somebody in the throat and grabbing somebody in the throat, and then two other people coming and stabbing each cheek and eyes. And I've seen some treacherous violence in my life. And sometimes I feel like out here, we talk a really good one. That's why I try to avoid violence to the best of my ability, because the level of violence that I've given people and that I've seen, I just don't want any part of it anymore. And I think I use fitness as a modality to kind of escape some of it. Mm-hmm. So that was the trigger with absolutely no aim in sight. The trigger was pulled, but I didn't know what direction I was going. So I would say that was the trigger. And that's when I started to look into like other ways of living. And my sister luckily would send me literature. And one of the literatures that I got at the time was a magazine that they still have called Entrepreneur. And at the time in this edition, they had the biggest industries, the biggest booms in the next 20 years. This was back, if my memory serves me correct, I would say this was post 9/11. If memory serves me correct, I think so. I want to say it was maybe 2003, maybe something along those lines. And in 2003, I read a magazine by Entrepreneur, and they said the top 5 industries, one of them was going to be wellness. Mm-hmm. And wellness at the time was like nursing, doctor, physicians, and another one called personal training in 2003. Mm-hmm. And the first book that I got, I still have in my living room. It was all the ins and outs about how to be a personal trainer. I got that book and I devoured it. I read it. I took notes on it. I had anatomy charts everywhere. I had bones. I had muscles. I had the nervous system. I was reading as if I was already in college. And sometimes the correction officers would come in, take all my stuff down. I had to get it all over and I put it all back up. I was a student of life, and that was just one book because I was too far off. But that was my journey. Mm-hmm. From that day.
I was going to just point out that for those who may not know Josif's story, if you have never heard of him before, he literally memorized every bone and muscle and the key interplays of the neuromuscular facilitation system in a prison cell using charts and stuff that his family was sending him. And I heard that story years ago before right at the time that you and I intersected at Bryant College. And I thought that was so cool. I thought it was what a constructive use of your time. And at some point, though, I'm going to get to a question, but before I do, I have another question that precedes it, which is, once you started going through the whole process of learning about anatomy and physiology, and the Entrepreneur magazine, I believe that they're saying that the fitness industry, the wellness industry, was going to grow by 26% over the next, or by 26% over a period of certain years, right? Is that the article that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they projected that in the next 20 years, there would be a boom in certain industries as a whole. This is before 2008, the crash and everything. And in that, I gravitated towards personal training. Why? I'm not too sure. Probably because it was fitness related and I've always worked out to some extent. In prison, we have to work out, not because we want to look good, but because it's going to save your life. So the fitter you are, the longer that you can actually go in the fight. I'm sorry, it is what it is. So we do a lot of calisthenics, a lot of burpees. There's a lot of routines that you have to do. You have to work out, not because you want to look good, but the stronger you are as a man, it gives you more confidence. And in fights, I can attest to it. I can outlast somebody in a fight where there's nobody looking. Or if there's multiple people against me and them, I can last longer so that I can protect my life. Mm-hmm. Not because I want to look good. So it's totally different.
Well, that just begged a whole nother question. So, you started lifting weights in prison as a survival tactic.
I started when I was 13.
Yeah.
In juvenile hall, I seen these weights and I just started moving them, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I just started moving stuff. I was like, oh, my muscles can They just felt different. Like I don't know what the sensation was. I was ignorant, but I like lifting weights.
Well, all of that work eventually became a life-giving discipline that served you really well over the last, at least since 2012, as far as I know. What's the difference though, mentally, and spiritually, between training as survival versus when now you're training with purpose and you're training others to be well? Have you been able to reconcile that in your head?
Well, I still have the same intensity when I train.
I've seen your videos.
The intensity in which I train is still very intense because now a lot of the people that come to the gyms, depending on which gyms and what the training modality may be, whether if it's powerlifting or whether if it's like CrossFit based or bodybuilding or just coming in here, females use the word toning or sculpting, and then guys use the word, getting buff or big or jacked or whatever the terminology is. I've kept the same intensity that I had in prison, and I still train with the same intensity out here, except now nobody's coming through that door to possibly stab me, or nobody's going to set me up to possibly shoot me down the street because I don't participate in activities like that anymore. But I teach each and every one of my clients that if you train with the intensity, you can overcome anything in life. And for the past 15 years, because since 2011, I've been a trainer, and I've taken that same intensity and the same principles that I taught myself in prison through mindset, and I teach each and every one of my clients. So I don't just train the body. I train their emotions, and I train their state of mind so that they can overcome anything in their entire life. And if I can, so can you. And I do that because through practical application, and I attest to it. Since being out, I've also undergone a number of different things: separations, divorce. My son doesn't talk to me. I created my YouTube channel to try to get in contact with him, called Letters to My Son. I've still undergone human pain and human suffering. I'm not abnormal. I just don't believe that anything in life should derail you. I don't believe it. I don't believe that death should derail you. When my mom died on the phone with me while I was in prison, I don't believe that we should waste our time when there's people in prison that I left that will never see. They can't open that door. I have the opportunity to open the door, so I have the opportunity to change any thought in my mind if I choose so. I'm not a victim. I'm victorious. I'm not surviving. I'm thriving. And I did it all from a piece of paper in prison, in a place where it's so lonely. And as a man, we don't like to think about that. We're not lonely, but we are. We're not bred to be alone. We're not bred to kill people, but with enough discipline and enough mind manipulation, that you can manipulate the mind into thinking that you're a gang member, that you're a murderer, that you're a convicted felon, whatever it is that you train your mind to be. With enough outside stimulus, you'll train your mind. Neuroplasticity teaches us that we can recreate whatever past and whatever future we want. With enough information, we can do it. And with enough belief, we can do it. I've done it over and over again.
I did not realize that your parents had passed, and I didn't realize that you were not speaking to your son. That's news to me. Even from a distance, having gotten to pseudo know you, I have a suspicion that you'll figure that out. You said a couple things though that I really want to make sure people grasp, because I don't think people really get it. Joseph, you've gone through things that most people haven't, and I am going to be very frank. I cannot stand how incredibly weak, I'll say, Americans or Western people are. They allow their emotions, what they're feeling at the moment, to dictate their behaviors. They blame. There's always an excuse. 7 out of 10 Americans are obese. The average weight of a woman in the United States is, I think, 170 pounds, and I'm rounding down between white and black. So, we're talking about very, very, very big people, right, that are unhealthy. Yeah. Everybody's got fucking problems, and it's never their fault. And I have not heard you talking so much about how it's everyone else's fault. I'm starting to hear a theme, and I know how this is going to go. And so I want to lead this, but I want to make sure that everybody hears something that's really important, because you're being so authentic and you're sharing some stuff that's fucking personal. And I don't want to discount that. You said something earlier that people who have never been through prison, have not experienced what you've experienced, don't really understand. I'm paraphrasing from a few minutes ago. I think that you are absolutely right. My wife and I went to Brazil to visit family. It's extended family by blood, but to me, it's the same. When I was 14 years old, we hosted a foreign exchange student from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He's literally my brother. There's no difference to me. And that was what would have been 1994.
Yeah,
he is literally brother. His wife, they were boyfriend and girlfriend when he came and visited, and he stayed with us for a year as an exchange student, and they're married to this day. I just had the pleasure of going to Rio this last September to visit them, and to see the whole family has grown, and it's just fantastic. And Rio de Janeiro is not America. It is not at all the same. it is extremely violent comparatively. And
Yeah.
like even my families tell me, do not take your phone out, no purses, don't show your wallet. There's so many rules about how to stay safe that we don't think about as Americans. And I was joking around with Heather, my wife. I was saying, I think every American in their junior or senior year of high school should go to a second or third world country in a protected way, but like also so they're exposed to it. So they can see that when they're doing their bullshit protests or whatever it is, I don't care what, it's not about politics. I don't care about what side you're on. It's all nonsense anyway. But when they're getting on their TikToks and their Instagrams and they're so passionate about the shit that they don't fucking understand. And they're so good at sounding so stupid. And I can't get my head wrapped around Americans. I really can't. It really drives me nuts how ignorant they really are. Go to Brazil for 3 weeks and realize that you can't take your fucking TikTok selfie because someone will stab you and take your fucking phone. No Americans think about this. They don't even know, Joseph, they don't even know that this is a thing because they're so privileged and sheltered. They have no clue. And then here you are talking about something that is orders of magnitude worse than just going on vacation to Rio de Janeiro. You're talking about day and night propensity and the risk of violence at all times. High alert, cortisol levels at maximum, stress levels that nobody else could hear, even comprehend. And there's a whole system that is allowing this to continue to be a problem. And that's not what we're going to talk about here today. But I just want to mention that for those of you who think that you know what it's really like, you really don't. You really don't. And you were exposing that. And I think that's really important. And you said that people don't really understand how hard it is. And you had to literally rebuild from zero, absolutely zero. And you had to go through internal battles. And those internal battles were about, can I survive if I don't play the game? How do I get out of this? Your life was at risk if you didn't play along. I'm so grateful that you did not have to endure the tragedy of having that other guy come into that cell and you having to do what you were expected to do. That is a blessing. And I think that you using that as a pivot point is great. And I just want to move it along here because I want to ask you about something.
Yeah.
You basically had to not only battle all your internal demons by yourself, which is absolutely commendable. Joseph, no one will ever be able to take that away from you. My man, I'm telling you right now that is one of the highest levels of respect that you can get from other men listening to this will be like, dude, this guy's a champion. Because even though you made mistakes, even though you involved yourself in violence, you still figured this out. And that's the whole point of where I wanted to get.
Yeah.
You use the word identity, self-worth, and I'm going to imply self-worth and trust. You had to learn to retrust yourself with your history. Tell me a little bit about that. What was your biggest internal battle that you, like the dragon in Josif, that you just had to fucking slay?
I think the biggest one, if I can be honest, sometimes it comes up, is I understood that I enjoyed some of these things that I was participating in. Like, I know this sounds very wrong and callous, but there was an enjoyment that I also received from violence from a very, very early age. My dad was very, very abusive. In gangs, I had to get initiated, more violence throughout my teenagers. Like I got into so many fights, I lost count. Guess what? More violence. So as a kid, without being taught proper parenting and proper sibling love, there's no compassion. I associated violence, like physical violence or murder or seeing murder or stabbings or shootings, because where I grew up, I associated that as like normal. And it's how we express love. My dad beats me. My fellow gang members beat me. In prison, we conduct violence. So in a way, I was like, that's love. That was my love language for years. So you mean to tell me I have to do away with that? So then, well, what's love? So then I have a disassociation between violence and love, but I still love violence. You can't say that I committed all of those crimes and not love it. Voluntary. Nobody put a gun to my head. My friends didn't force me to do things in prison. It was still voluntary. I wasn't afraid to do these things. I wanted to do these things because I also wanted to move up, but I had to figure out a way how to still get out. So it was very, very confusing to me because I knew I didn't want to be in prison. I had to be a productive member of society. Mind you, I also cussed a lot. So I had to retrain my speech pattern. I had to retrain how to actually keep eye contact. And I had to retrain that I shouldn't use manipulation tactics all the time to have a conversation with somebody to lure them into an answer. There's a lot of things that prison taught me. In prison, I used zoology to experiment with humans. I mean, I interviewed countless people before I paroled so that I could figure out what they were doing on the street so I don't do those things. And I learned that from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, because he interviewed countless people how to be successful. Guess what? I did the same thing, same tactic, except with a bunch of criminals that kept going in and out of prison. I picked up patterns that all of them were doing, and I said, you know what? I'm not doing any of those things. But guess what? All of those things were things that I would go back to doing. So I had to recreate an entire human being from a cell surrounded by other human beings that conducted business like that. I had no mentor. I had no leader. I had no role model. My role models became books and audios through Success Magazine, and I would write. I love to write. I'm dyslexic, and I didn't speak very well. I was ignorant. I was very, very slang and ghetto, and I spoke a different way. Um, I had a different mannerism about myself. I did not care about helping people. So what did I have to fight? What didn't I have to fight is a better question, not what I had to fight, what demons. Any demon that you can think of. It's almost like plucking somebody from another country that didn't speak the language, doesn't have the mannerisms, and plucking him into another place. Okay, recreate that from this place. That's what I did. That's what a lot of people miss, is that I recreated the person that I helped to create from a place where I had no chance. You talk about a rose growing from concrete. I didn't even have a rose. I didn't have a seed. I just created something like a miracle. I had to fight with everything because my own cellmates didn't understand what I was doing, because I did things so differently. I get up in the morning, I stopped watching television. I had to fight with everything that they were pushing my way. No more drugs, no more drinking, no more television. Why do you read so much? Why do you talk so differently than us now? Because guess what? In society, we can't speak to people like this. We can't yell. We can't shout. We can't put our hands on people. We can't communicate with this. So I had to learn how to communicate with my mind and with my words and with my demeanor.
You had a mindset.
That's not the normal Joe. The normal Joe that I remember and that went to prison, the normal Joe had at least 2 firearms on him at all times. And if anybody ever interfered with me, you probably would end up shot somewhere. That was the original Joe that went to prison from the time he was 10. And from the time he was 12 is the first time that I had a firearm in my hand. And from 12 until I went to prison for attempted murder, I was never without a firearm, and I was never without some type of weapon. Because guess what? The other people that were also doing the same thing, they were the same way. So it was either me or them.
I was about to say, man, you were able to really rearrange your mindset and create a resilience around a new identity. You did create a new identity. You reestablished your self-worth. You formulated a new trust around yourself. I have no doubt that, and I'm just going to speculate here, and you can just tell me I'm absolutely batshit crazy, or if I'm close to the mark. I have a suspicion that your propensity to violence is controlled through a very, very strong barrier that you've erected, but in the right circumstance could easily break. And I have a suspicion that it would only break if people that you loved, cherished, or valued were now potentially at risk. I'll make an assessment and tell me if this is correct, that you are a man who is wildly dangerous. However, you are now a man who controls it, and you no longer allow that lion, the starving lion that is that part of the old Joe personality, to take the reins. You keep it caged. But I have a suspicion that you now control the liver that opens that door in a way that you never have before. Am I correct about that?
No, you hit it spot on. So I would definitely agree to that. And I do everything in my power to keep that at bay. I don't think that there's anything out here that can trigger me, because that's just a sign of weakness to me. If I let an outside circumstance trigger anything that I can control, because if I can't control an outside circumstances, I can still do one thing. I can still control my reaction to it. And that's what prison taught me. You want to talk about not having control? Talk about sitting in a cell for 2.5 years like I did. For 2.5 years, that's the longest I spent in a cell without seeing the sun, without the sun touching my skin. 2.5 years. And 2.5 years taught me that door can't open, but my mind can be so free and so open that nothing that you do will ever affect from not being free. I was more free in prison sometimes than I physically see people free out here. My mind was so free more in there, and I was incarcerated. My body was. But out here, I've come across people that they're so incarcerated mentally that their bodies will never experience the type of freedom that I experienced while I was in prison. And that's sad.
That is sad. I suspect that I know what you're talking about. There's the social media generation. They're just, everything is so reactive and emotional, and they have no idea how hard it really is. But I wanted to make sure that you understood that what I was saying was a compliment, because I think that the best men are the ones that have the very high capacity for violence, and they never employ it unless it's necessary. as it relates to protecting their friends and their family. I think that that's how men are built. We are built with this innate potential. And I think that in some ways we lose the story, and then we become criminals. That does happen.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that you captured the beast. You put it away. I think the first time you and I met was 2011. So I've been literally watching you, never letting that lion out again. And you mentioned something to, I was in a group, you were speaking, and I was there. I don't remember when this was, honestly. I apologize. But you had talked about Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Successful, or no, was that what Stephen Covey's 7 Habits? Was that the one that you really liked?
Stephen.
Rich?
Yes, Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He also has another one that I read, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families, that I picked up after my divorce. But yeah, that's a phenomenal book.
I think it's great. And it's funny too, because I'm not trying to compare myself by any means to Stephen Covey or his son, who wrote The Speed of Trust, which is also an excellent book. If you haven't picked it up, you should try that one out too. I wrote The 90-Day Habit Transformation. And in that, I talk about the power of conscious response. And that is about what you've done. Essentially, when you are getting instigated by something, you now have the power of a conscious response. And you're like, I'm not responding to that in a negative way, because that's not worth it. Especially when you said out here, I understand the vernacular that you're using. In prison, you had it's something I can't even imagine. I've never been, but I've heard enough stories where I can empathize, but I can't even begin to understand how hard that was. I'd like to put myself in the situation and consider it as best I can, but it's still not the same, because I don't have the risk of being shanked. Like, I don't have the same risks that you do. And that's why I think that this is such a powerful story. And that's why I really wanted people to hear it, because you reshaped so much, not just about your physique and not just about the way that you grew by learning and educating yourself. Joseph, you've changed the way that you think. And you've allowed that to change the way you act daily, where you can become a member of society that is high value. And I think that is remarkable, because, anyone can do a tough workout. Anybody can do violence, right? Here's something that you did. And from my estimation, one of the things that I find extraordinarily cool about you is that you have developed a mental discipline that is actually founded in extraordinary pain. And what you did is you took all of those negative aspects, and you made the decision that you said, okay, this big giant ball of negativity and all of the things, your upbringing, your immigration to the United States. I know that you had a hard time in Tennessee. I know you had a hard time in Texas. There was a problems with language. I know you really gravitated to the Hispanic community, and there's a lot of things that had happened in your life. And you said, okay, I'm now going to go into this lifestyle of violence and incarceration. And you at some point took that giant negative ball of shit, and you said, I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it over here, and I'm going to put this in a case, and I'm going to look at it and remind myself, this is where I came from. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mine for gold within myself. I'm going to reshape. I'm going to dig through, and I'm going to figure this out. And while you always see that ball of shit in that display case, as long as I've known you, you've never opened that. And you've disciplined yourself into an entirely new identity. You've reformulated trust with yourself and society. You have also done remarkable work with people in the fitness, nutrition, and habit space, like your wellness coaching and all the things that you've done, your fear competitions, all this. You were just at somebody's birth yesterday that you were taking care of. You do all kinds of things that are so selfless, and that discipline was important. So how do you coach someone? Like, what's your take now that you've learned all those things? How do you coach people now? Like, what's some of your principles to create unshakable internal discipline that's not just physical? How do you help people with their mindset?
When I first, I'm not granted. So you mentioned I was at my friend Carla's birth. I had 13 appointments yesterday, and then I headed over to the hospital. I was there for a long time going through this, because I wasn't there for my son. And then I went home, went back, took him some coffee. I had a stack of appointments today. I have this podcast, more appointments. So my days consist of anywhere from 10 to 12 clients a day. Now, granted, this isn't my first facility. Like, I ran clubs, I opened up clubs, I was recruited. I'm very, very familiar with the ins and outs about corporations, running clubs. But one thing I never lost is the humanity. I don't want to get away from humanity, and I don't want to get away from the fact that I'm a human and I'm in pain, and everybody that I work with, I want to help. The same level of pain and sorrow and negativity and violence that I had and that I participated in for X number of years is the same intensity that I have towards genuinely wanting to help. So I just want to repeat that. I make six figures and I have for a number of years, and I've done it by helping people. I haven't done it by being a charlatan, by taking money from online coaching and selling products and presenting a Ferrari and providing a Pinto service. I don't do that. I'm not a charlatan. I genuinely want to help. So how do I help? I connect. I start by asking questions that are very powerful, and I start by listening to their self-talk. Here's an example. When I first get a client, they use words like, I'm weak, I can't do this. They said that I shouldn't do this. And the first thing I do is I rearrange the whole entire vocabulary like I did with me. Stop saying you can't, stop saying you're weak, and stop listening to these people out there that are feeding you their self-limiting beliefs, and you're biting into it because the same thing that people told me in prison. You can't do this, you shouldn't do this, and you're never going to be successful. And I came out here and I took everything that they said I shouldn't have and some. So I try to teach them to have a positive self-talk, not positive belief about themselves. Start talking more positive about yourself. Change can't to I'm unsure how to accomplish something. How can I do it? Stop saying that you're weak, because that's a state of mind, and maybe start using words like I'm just deconditioned physically. And for the love of whoever you believe in out there, stop listening to people in your life that don't even believe in themselves and aren't even anywhere remotely close to where you want to go. Because guess what? John Maxwell talks about the law of the lid. They're only going to teach you probably under what they can actually comprehend themselves. And if you're going to get led by them, there's a problem. So I first have to develop myself and my state of mind higher so that I can take each and every one of my clients past their own beliefs. That's a lot of progress that I've had to create for myself through pain. And I still listen to podcasts. I still read. I still go to symposiums, and I will never stop learning. So how about I start with myself so that I can help more, rather than how I can be a charlatan and come up with the latest gadget, the latest fad nutrition that doesn't work, and the latest exercise that is just regurgitated information from a basic seated row. But now you apply it with some bands that you shouldn't be using. The industry that we're in has gotten so far away from what I am actually doing, which is I'm trying to change lives, not sell products and gimmicks.
Yeah, you and I have always agreed on this. This is something, as you know, social media is a problem. For me, I don't like it. I struggle with it. I don't know what to post. How many more fucking bicep curl videos do we need online? I have tried to post things that are habit related, but nobody fucking cares because it requires effort. But I wanted to just transition to something here real quick out of, some of the darker stuff, which I feel like everybody's got an idea. They now understand how serious this is and how you have been able to crawl out of the darkness and you made your light. That is amazing. And you're quite successful in business. I've been very pleased to watch you grow. You have industry and business lessons that are super cool. But more specifically, I want to talk about, there's a story. It's an old story. When you walked into Bryan College, you were told that you needed certification, that maybe they wasn't going to work. But you presented yourself in a very specific way and you were accepted into the university and you graduated with an associate's in advanced fitness and nutrition sciences. And did you take the ACSM or the NASM route? I don't remember.
I wanted to take both of them because I studied for both of them. I've always been an overachiever. So, I've had up to 10 certifications. I can take a cert. So I wanted to take both, but they said I had to choose one. So I chose NASM.
So tell us the story about when you first started in your professional career. Let's actually start at the Bryan College because, you're beloved by the faculty there. You and I, that's how you and I met, was through that network. Let's talk a little bit about how you got started in the industry after prison.
Well, I paroled to where my son was at, and they had a bar, and I knew that working in a bar wasn't appropriate because of all the countless of people that I interviewed. They went back to their old way, drinking, being on alcohol. So I was on parole. So I knew that wasn't a direction that I wanted to head in because I didn't spend all that years learning about anatomy, physiology, and biomechanics. My close family members told me not to pursue that because it's not going anywhere. But I needed money right away, so I created another business called Bad Boy Cleaning, which was adult entertainment. I went into people's houses and I cleaned their houses, which, by the way, I told my parole agent at the time, and he thought it was absurd. He had to call in a supervisor, and the supervisor said, well, he's not doing anything illegal, so basically he's creating what exactly? You're going to walk into people's homes and clean your house? Absolutely. Well, it's legal, so I got a special business license, and I got that idea from cleaning myself, and I was like, I could probably do this for a living, which I did. So I did it for a short period. There's another business that I created. And then I decided to go to Bryan College. While I was in Bryan College, it was hard because I'm still on parole. I had an ankle monitor. I went to prison for attempted murder. I was very transparent about who I was. And I remember Dr. B walking in and he was like, I don't really know about this. And I remember handing him a piece of paper. And that piece of paper was all of my steps that I had to accomplish so that I can stay out. And he was just messed because I've never had anybody come in here with a piece of paper with all of their steps that they have to do with check marks. I got to get my license. And I said, look, if you let me come into this program, I not only promise that I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, but I'm probably going to excel and be your most, I didn't say prize, I can't remember the terminology, but I told them that I was going to make them proud. And then I went through the classes, and then I didn't want to wait. And then I got a job at 24 Hour Fitness. So I was going to school. I was doing bad boy cleaning a little bit, and I still had a job at 24. I got a free certification called Action at the time, which wasn't certified. It is now. And I got a job. I went in there, and 1 year I got promoted to assistant fitness manager. Then I got promoted to fitness manager. Then I got promoted to another fitness manager. And then I left, and I got recruited to Lifetime. And then, my every single year I've been promoted, because every single place I've been to, I've excelled at everybody in the building. And I've done things unlike other people in the building because nobody there can teach me anything. Because the materials and literature that I read, a lot of people just don't read because they're too busy focusing about what their brother's doing, their sister's doing, and everybody else is doing. I was focused on what I needed to do for myself so that I can impact lives. So it started at Bryan College. I don't want to use the word begging, but I definitely had to plead my case on why they should take me. And my fitness journey started there, but it didn't end there because it's still going.
Always think that's an interesting story because I was there at the time. And while you never were in any of my classes, I knew who you were. And that's obviously where we had crossed paths a couple of times over the years. And then we became friends on social media because that's what social media, in my opinion, should be for. And it's been lovely to watch your career growth and to see you become the man that you have literally chiseled out of stone. Like, you did it yourself. Like you said, you had no mentors. There was no leaders and nothing. You did it. And I just really wish that young men would listen to this and think, my hope would be that one of the most beautiful things about being a man with a mission that is maybe necessarily wrought through hardship, doesn't have to be, but sometimes it is. But when you serve others, the service of others is probably one of the greatest joys that I've experienced. That's why I do what I do. And I think that you and I resonate in a lot of ways about that, because your story isn't just about personal change. It's not just about you working through diversion and having to face some systemic obstacles. That's not even really all it is. That's just the beginning, dude. Like, that's book one. It's not even a trilogy. It could be a whole series. And so now you've come a long way and you are on a mission. And so how do you see your role? Have you ever, well, let me rephrase that. Sorry. When you think about what you're the most passionate, is it helping people who have suffered like you have, or is it showing people who haven't how easy it really is and that they have no excuses? Like, there's got to be a way that you can play this from a business standpoint.
Well, that's why I created my coaching, Ironflex Fitness Coaching, which is a registered trademark now. So I'm just waiting for my final stamp of approval, but I've registered Ironflex Fitness and Ironflex Fitness Coaching as a registered trademark and my logo. And I created this because one of my clients said, I do mentorship meetings, and she's like, I listen to a lot of your stuff and it's like really good. Have you ever thought about actually creating like a course? And I was like, I'm not too technologically savvy. That's another thing I had to learn when I got out of prison. I didn't know anything about like typewriter. I still suck at like some of the technology stuff. I'm much better now, but I have learned that I don't need to know everything. I just need to know where to go for the information so that people can help me. I didn't become successful on my own. I became successful because of people and the connections and the community that I built. And my client actually helped me create this course through AI and through a lot of the positive technologies that we have now. But the course would not have been created had it not been for me putting out all of the information and all of my words and the years of experience that I have. It wouldn't have been created. So I created it so that I can actually impact trainers, because trainers can impact more lives than I can impact an individual life, because they may touch 15 or 25 or how many clients they have. So these simple principles that I teach in my course, if they would take that, it's a step-by-step on how to actually make six figures as a trainer. But it's not just as a trainer, it's the principles that I talk about that I learned. And you can apply that towards anything. You want to be a good man, apply these principles. You want to be a good human, apply these principles. You want to be a good husband, a good father, apply these principles. I just decided to apply it towards fitness because I'm passionate about fitness. I'm passionate about what it's done for me. You can apply it towards anything. So it's not really one person. I don't want to, because I've been to diversion programs. I speak at Juvenile Hall. I speak at the university here. I speak at Sierra College. I've spoken at Juvenile Hall. I'm constantly trying to give back and share my pain in hopes that I give people perspective. That's all I really want to do is give you perspective, because your life is your life only, and that's your perspective, which is very narrow. I have a different perspective, and I don't try to claim that my perspective is better, but it's much different. If I can offer perspective that's going to impact your life and enrich your life, that's my biggest mission. Just to give people perspective that your life is hard, but guess what? It's not that hard. And if you want to know what hard is, let me explain it to you. And I don't use that as an excuse like you do. So I just try to give people perspective. You can either be a victim of circumstance or the victim that you decide or give life to, or you can be victorious. But the choice is yours. I just try to teach people to empower themselves. And if you can teach somebody to be empowered by themselves, man, woman, child, my teenagers that I've mentored that are now in college, the parents that I've helped, that is a very, very fulfilling feeling. And it's worth more than the amount of money that I've made, hands down.
It is one of the things that I think really separates the charlatans, as you said earlier, from the actual professionals, the real caregivers of fitness, which is we don't do the tricks, the gimmicks, the fads, and the bullshit. We don't do it. We break it down very simply. I've said it a million fucking times. I could write somebody the best workout program in the world. I can write you a dietary program that's perfectly nutritionally balanced based on your output, based on your food preferences. Everything could be perfect. Absolutely stunning, delivered on a silver platter. Fuck, man. Platinum platter. And if you don't do it, then you're not seeing results. That is the problem that you and I face, is that everybody wants everything and they want to give nothing. They want to take, they don't want to give. I've heard you say this. You have said that fitness is more than lifting, it's transformational. I've heard you say that. So when it comes to you struggling more than just physique goals, or like, everybody now, they use the word trauma, which I'm so fucking over that word. It's like nobody really knows what that means. They just use it right on TikTok. No, trauma is something very serious. There's a difference between inconvenience and trauma, but we live in such a cushy society that we don't know the difference anymore. You do, sir. You do. But when you talk about that, when you say that lifting isn't just about fitness, can you explain how you use that to guide your clients or even the trainers that you coach into a mindset transformation?
Well, the same pain, I have learned that the same pain that you undergo, whether you're trying to do a 1 rep max or you're trying to accomplish a goal that's at people, and I don't want to discredit people's goals. So whether somebody has a weight loss goal and they've been a certain amount of weight their whole entire life because their improper eating habits or because their own mental habits aren't really proper. So I got to start from the mind to the body. And I've done so many transformations, whether that's competitive bodybuilding or pain management or taking an athlete from where he's kind of good to like, now this person is really good, but it's all state of mind. So the same pain that we endure in the gym, if you go to the gym and you're not in some type of pain and you want to check social media, you want to check an email, you want to change your songs or whatever it is that you're doing on your phone instead of training. In prison, I didn't have this luxury. Like I had to go in and train. There's a certain rite of passage that a man and woman has to go through to endure pain so that they can understand that pain that they endured in the gym is the same pain that they can endure, whether if it's emotional, whether if it's physical, whether if it's spiritual, or your feelings just getting hurt. We're too sensitive and we're too soft. In the gym, that transfers to your state of mind. How you train in the gym, I can tell how your state of mind is as a man and woman. If you're intense in the gym, and I don't mean like intense where you got to train for your life. I get it. We're not doing that out here. But if you're coming to the gym and you want some type of change, guess what? It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt emotionally. It's going to hurt mentally. And you better believe it's going to hurt physically. And all of these people out here that claim that they can do all of these things by just walking a little bit more and starting with a couple steps here, that's a good start. But you're going to have to be in pain. You got to get comfortable and embrace the pain. I've learned to just embrace the pain or embrace the fuck. Because the war that I deal with out here, whether if it's like shoulder pain and causing muscles to grow, is going to be painful. Well, guess what? You want to lose 150 pounds? That's probably going to hurt too. It's going to hurt your feelings. It's going to hurt your tummy. And it's going to hurt your thought process on all what you thought was right is going to be wrong. So I have to just associate the pain to training is the same pain that you're going to have to overcome. And if you can overcome that in here, you can overcome anything in life.
I also would submit this, that most people in the Western world don't know the difference between discomfort or pain. And they think that the former is the latter, and it's not. Soft. We're so soft. Real pain, most people never really endure, at least consistently. We're uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
I think that is the point that I drive home, is that when I have people be like, oh, I've tried this and I've tried that, I'm like, I feel for you because I understand the pain. I get that. That's really difficult. All of these fads and the tricks and the gimmicks and the social media nonsense that you've subscribed to hasn't worked. I get that. And I feel for these people. I'm empathetic to it. That's why we do what we do. You and I are both in this industry because we made the decision that we're dedicating ourselves to changing and improving, and even in some cases saving lives. Now, some people are like, oh, that's so hyperbolous. I hate when people just brand us so with a broadsword. Oh, you're just fitness people. No, you know what I am? I'm a humanist. I'm somebody who literally has to look at the individual person, and I have to extract so much information. And basically, I have to do a quantitative analysis. I have to understand who this person is, what they're capable of, what's their current condition, what's their goal, and how do we create everything around that person to allow them to be successful based on their unique needs. That's not gimmicky. That's transformative, right? That's where you're really looking at the person. That's something. And very few people do that in the industry anymore. You and I had talked about this before. Social media is all about algorithms. Social media is all about anecdotes. Oh, you want to get a big old butt? We'll just do these little glute kickbacks that I do. And then you got some girl who's 22 years old, who is genetically gifted, who maybe she has lifted pretty well and done a good job. Good for her. Okay, fine. But now she's got, 1.2 million followers. And then she's got a bunch of women who are not even remotely willing to do what she's willing to do. Yeah. And they're being sold a lie. And it's like, oh, just buy my little template. It's only $49.99. I'm so dumb. And people buy it. And they buy it and they buy it and they buy it and they buy it. And then they say, oh, fitness doesn't work, or this doesn't. And it's wrong. It's just, it wasn't for you. It's an anecdote. It's a 22-year-old girl. How good did you fucking look at 22? Probably not so bad, especially if you're older, because like in the 80s, we weren't fat, so it's like the world has changed. Social media has definitely been, I think, it's a destructive force in our culture. I will say that over and over and over again. I don't think there's an argument that can be presented to me that is reasonable enough for me to change my opinion that social media is destroying our society. I think that it is wicked. I think that it's all false. It's filtered. It's the right angle. It's the right lighting. It's the right words. It's all about hooks. It's all about products, and it's placement, and it's about sex. And I hate it. What's funny about that is I'm looking at our advertising and what we're doing with Forge, and we're seeing a change in the way that people respond to what we're advertising. We used to get huge praise. We're doing so great because we said we do not do before and after pictures because that's not your body. So the body of Josif, a man who's literally been lifting since he's 12, you don't get that overnight. You don't get that by buying a template off TikTok. That's not how this works. And so people are delusional about what fitness is all about. People don't understand. When you say pain, I think when you think of pain, if I'm going to just get in your head for a second, Josif's level of pain as a 10, most people don't even register. Your 1 is somebody's 10 of pain, right? Because they're confusing discomfort and pain.
Yeah.
And I want to make a change in our industry where people realize that fitness isn't painful, but it sometimes hurts. Yeah, you're going to get DOMs a little bit when your algorithm changes and you're stressing your muscles and your nervous system in a different way. Yeah, you're going to get a little sore. Yeah, suck it up. It's not that fucking hard. It's uncomfortable. Real pain, like traumatic pain, that's not normal. That's not typical. And I just want to make sure that you and I are speaking the same language to people, because I think that you use the word pain in a different way because you've experienced absolute top tier pain where most people have just been, their latte was made wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely agree in everybody's level of pain, but there's some telltale signs if somebody's like training really, really hard. Then there's some like bullshit signs you're not training hard. It's based on how much I got to spot, how much weight. There's a reference that I have that you don't have. So I think through pain, you can actually become very, very prosperous. Diamonds are created under pressure. There's all of these fancy sayings and there's these fancy terminologies that we use. But the fact of the matter is, through pain, you can actually create a beautiful thing. I mean, I look up to Marcus Aurelius. He wrote Meditations. I came across that literature a long, long time ago, and I still believe it. That man didn't have a beautiful castle somewhere that he was ruling. He basically had 20 years of plus war. His children were dying. He was getting cheated on. I mean, Rome was just in shambles. And he created this phenomenal book that everybody should read that was just so calm and so tranquil. And I'm thinking to myself, he's probably writing this and people are dying out there. There's a stench of death everywhere. It's raining probably. It's muddy. He's not in the comfort of some castle and he's just ruling. That's a lot of pain. And in that pain, he wrote something so beautiful because he was so calm, but yet so violent. And yet he was so wise. So I use people like that. And I don't know if people like that even exist anymore because our level of comfort is so vast. Everything is so instant and everything is so comfortable. So I think it's okay to be uncomfortable. And I try to teach my clients that it's okay to be uncomfortable because guess what? Out of that uncomfort, you will create something that's probably going to be so beautiful to you, you have no idea. But we're too afraid to be uncomfortable. So maybe we don't use the word pain, but maybe be a little bit uncomfortable. Don't go to Starbucks all the time. Lift a little bit harder. Believe in yourself a little bit more. Maybe don't believe the things that you actually see on social media. Maybe don't pick up the phone and look at 15 filtered messages and stories from people that you really don't know.
Yeah, Joseph, everything that you just said makes perfect sense to me. We do need to step away from the social media or the other influences that are out there that can sometimes be a detractor to what we're trying to accomplish, because we really should be focused on ourselves, right? How can we become the best that we can be? And then that's how you bring people with you. So I guess I have two questions for you. The second to last is, there's a theme that you have in your social media. It's in your stories. You post it quite often, and you have been for many years. I've noticed that you typically dress up as this character for Halloween. I think it's cool. You do a different kind of version all the time. And I realized that there's got to be something very deep. Can you explain what your association is to the Joker from DC Comics? Like, it's such a prevalent character that you have present in your persona all the time. And looking at what you're wearing now, it's the Joker colors. I know there's got to be something interesting. Will you tell us what that's about?
Well, a lot of people knew that I got married. So I was married one time, and we actually got married as the Joker and Harley Quinn. So her name is Andrea Burkhead Todorovits. We got married, and we both had a close attachment per se. So we used to call it mad love. But long before she came about, you got to think about my colorful background that I just explained to everybody. So from the time I was 10, violence, violence, violence. It's like it's a lot of violence. The the Joker is depicted as a villain. However, to me, I don't really depict him as a villain. If you look at the Joaquin Phoenix version of the Joker, they actually showed you that anybody can become the Joker, pushed to a limit, pushed to a break. I have seen people in a very, very low state that claim to be very violent, but when the shit hits the fan, they shit and piss their pants, literally, not metaphorically, because until you are presented with extreme violence, you don't know how you're going to react. I often hear about people claiming that they're going to do all of these fantastic things, and I always hear people claiming that they're going to do all of these things until the shit hits the fan, per se. When the shit hits the fan, you will know exactly who you are. My association and my closeness to the Joker is, I was asked by a very close friend, the one that just gave birth. Sometimes we sit in a little circle and we ask powerful questions. And Carla asked me, Joe, when was the last time that you actually felt disingenuine on social media? And I got extremely vulnerable. And I said, I feel like I am not my real self every single time I post the things that I post, because for many, many years, I was a villain. That's the best way that I can describe it. But even in my villainistic stage, I didn't feel like I was a villain. And then when I got out, I felt like I was this person that everybody just look up to. My clients, my close friends, I always do what I say that I'm going to do. I'm very positive. I'm very upbeat. The association that I have to the Joker is sometimes I don't know who I really am. To be quite honest with you, I sometimes feel like I'm a villain trapped in a body that is just trying to portray something of himself that's better for the world. I'm it's very complicated and very dark, but if you stop and think about how insane the Joker is, at one time that was me. But then there's moments that he has in this love with Harley Quinn that's very soft and caring and very passionate and is very normal. But yet he goes off with his villains and he blows up buildings. He's very insane. So he's not very stable. In the same regard, my association to the Joker is sometimes, to be quite honest, I don't know how to play these roles, because although I know that that isn't me anymore, that's still very much in me. But yet I don't want to let that person out, as we've talked about. Extreme violence is something that at one time I enjoyed. I no longer enjoy it, so I have this duality of who I really am, and the Joker is a perfect character of who I am. Sometimes I'll paint half my face to kind of show that although you can be bad, there's still a lot of good in people. And although people are good or claim to be good, there's a lot of bad in those people too. I don't think we're just very one-sided. I think that person is still in me. I just keep it very tame, and it comes out in different ways.
I think that there's a little Joker in everybody, but you have a unique situation and a history where you've been able to explore that in a way that's very profound that other people just couldn't imagine. It's clear to me that you've grown so tremendously, and you're very passionate about helping other people grow as well. But I think that there is something I said earlier, something very powerful about somebody who has the propensity to violence, but they only unveil it and expose it in a moment of true need. And it's usually to protect oneself, their friends, or their family. And I think that we've lost a lot of that psychology. We use buzzwords nowadays, especially in social media and the mainstream media, which is that toxic masculinity and all that nonsense. And really, I think that people are toxic in general. You said it yourself, and I agree with you. I think that we all have a little bit of that inside of us. It is the ability to not leverage that in unnecessary means that makes somebody valuable, that makes somebody good or bad.
Yeah.
And you chose, right? Because that's the thing too, is that, you've been able to make a decision and you have a comparative base where you can say, I don't want this anymore in my life. And you've taken all of that. It's a little elementary, but I'll do my best on this. You have taken all that energy that you normally would put into violence.
Yeah.
And you've now put it into saving people's lives. That's a huge paradigm shift. And I've heard you use the word paradigm shift before. Do you think that that's true? Is that kind of a motivator for you in your career?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I try to do that with a lot of my clients. So I had this conversation today with a client because I told people that I was going to start a group chat with people that want to compete this year. So she came in today and I brought her up to her and she goes, I knew you were going to do it because that's just what you do. I said, in January. And I said, are you ready? And she goes, no. And I said, well, why not? She goes, well, she didn't really have a clear answer other than here. I said, the reason that you're not ready is because you keep telling yourself you're not ready. When you want to do something, you're going to be solutions based. When you don't want to do something, you're going to be excuse based. So which one is it? Do you want to do it or don't you want to do it? I can probably get you to look the best that you've ever looked in your entire life after having 3 kids for the summer. Now, granted, this isn't going to be easy. This isn't for everybody. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to come up, or I like to say, when you decide to compete for a bodybuilding show, the red carpet doesn't get rolled out. Nobody cares how tired you are. Nobody cares how hungry you are. Nobody cares how emotional you are. It's nobody's concern. And don't be selfish. Just because you want to look good doesn't mean that everybody else has to suffer. Your kids, your husband. Have enough emotional intelligence that this is going to hurt. This is going to be a little bit of a discomfort, but your life isn't going to end. The world is going to keep worlding. So you just have to decide whether or not you want to do it. Because I'm here to support you. Your husband is. And I started a group chat, little community, and we're all here to support you. So the only thing that I ask is that you step out of your way. And that's why I presented it. Big smile on her face. She goes, you're absolutely right.
This year in October, I'll have been a fitness professional for 25 years. That's a quarter of a century. That's a long time. And it's pretty much mostly all I've ever done my whole life, being 46. And I've seen some really interesting trends in the way that people think about well-being.
Yeah.
And always there's the common themes, right? I want to lose weight, or I want to be jacked, or I want to accomplish some kind of extrinsic goal, something down the line, right? Something that's in the future. Very few people actually look at what it's going to take to get there, and then reconciling that with the reality of, you said it, this is a perfect example. You can't punish the rest of the world because of your decisions to accomplish something. And
absolutely,
I feel that in fitness and nutrition specifically, that people have a tendency to punish everybody around them for their choices. And then what they do now, because it's so obnoxious, people will now use allergies and sensitivities. They try and they make an appeal from an emotional argument.
Yeah.
Or they'll inject medicine as an excuse for their behavior. So, sorry, vegans and gluten people, anytime you go to a restaurant and somebody is informative about their dietary restrictions, it pisses me off. Drives me nuts. They make everybody else around them miserable. I think it's for show. I've been doing this long enough where I can confidently say that 95% of the time, it's just made up. 5% of the time, you're going to get somebody who has celiac or Crohn's or a major medical problem. I'm not talking about that. Of course, everybody likes to do that, don't they, Joseph? They like to go to the extreme exception, and then they pin their argument on that. That is extraordinarily weak in its bad faith. But if you look at, in general, most people don't have a significant amount of medical conditions around their dietary intake. Now, I will say this, though, as a caveat to that. As the food quality in the United States has declined exponentially over the years, I can agree that there's probably a lot more than there should be. How about that?
Yeah.
So I'll make a concession, but that doesn't mean that you have to be performative about it. You can silently understand your dietary needs and how to manage it, and nobody even needs to know. I had decided that at one point I wanted to get to my closest genetic potential. I was lean, man. I was operating at 5-6% body fat. And I was at Bryan University. I was teaching nearly full time, and no one would have ever known how careful and diligent I was about my dietary intake and the intensity of my exercise, because this was for me and I didn't need to include anyone else. I think that what you just said is really important. Support is different than sympathy. And so all of those who are listening or watching, just remember that you can get support But if you want to actually work with a professional and be in an environment that is edifying, is going to lift you up and is going to empower you, or at least open the door for you to become self-empowered, then you have to be realistic and you have to leave the social media buzzwords at the door. You can't use the words trauma. You can't use the words gluten sensitive. Like all that shit has to go away. You have to just basically dig in, and you got to mind your own business and get to work and not affect everybody else in the world around you. It doesn't need to go on TikTok. It's a private struggle. Fitness, nutrition, and habit, managing your well-being should be private. There was a period of time in the United States, at least, where there were two things that you never asked anybody. Never. Before 2021, you would never ask anybody who they voted for. Second thing you would never do is you would never ask anybody their medical status. Then 2020, 2021 comes along, and all of those courtesies, the social contracts that we make with each other completely got blown away. And then now you've created silos of judgment. So if you don't believe precisely this, then you are morally inferior to this group or to whoever is judging you. And I find that to be absolutely nonsensical. It's absurd. And honestly, I think that it's destroying the fabric of our society. I really do. And I can make a case for that in another, maybe you and I could do another podcast. We could talk about moral decay from the perspective of a man who's seen violence and death in his face, right? Compared to, your latte wasn't made right, as I said earlier. Creating clear boundaries is great. And I find that most people nowadays, they seem adverse to boundaries setting. I want boundaries. I want to know what my parameters for behavior are. And a lot of people now are so easily offended by it. And I can't subscribe to it. I would like to know where I stand with somebody. And on the back of that, if somebody has an issue with me, can we work to resolve it?
Yeah. I mean, I think we can always work to resolve almost anything as long as we approach it with an open mind, right? We can't approach it with this ideas and like rite of passage that my way is the only way. We have clearly shown as a humanity that there's multiple ways to get to the same destination, but that's what causes division.
Yeah. Well, the problem that I have with it, since we're kind of like on this like slightly philosophical, sociological content topic, now I feel like that division is is the byproduct of the way that the world has moved recently. It used to be discussion, not division.
Mm-hmm.
I remember coming back to this whole thing. My grandparents, all my grandparents are deceased now because I'm aged. But I remember when I had asked, I was a teenager. I had asked my grandma Sturgis. I asked her who she voted for, and this was, I think, when, oh man, this had to have been like the Bill Clinton era, right?
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, "It is never polite to ask anybody who they voted for. That is a private matter." I thought that was so fascinating. That stuck with me my whole life. Of course, I was a kid and I just wanted to know. I wanted to understand. She said, "However, because you're family, let me explain some of my values and why I chose to vote the way that I did." And she explained it to me. We don't do that anymore. Now it's like, well, who did you vote for? And then that's a flag that you stick in. And now there is a moral line that's created. And you're like, well, no, you're not a good person. And there's no more crossover. And this is the reason that I'm bringing this up in your case is because I said in the very beginning of this podcast, you have to suspend judgment. You have to suspend judgment because not everybody's black or white. The Joker isn't one person. Josif is not one person. Michael's not one person. We're multifaceted. We're extraordinarily complex beings. And I don't like when we distill people down to the sum of what we dislike, and then we cut and paste that to their entire existence. I think it's wrong.
Yeah. It's funny. That's very funny that you mentioned that because I tell a lot of my clients and my friends that I am all of these things, but none of those things. So, because I believe that as a human and all of the stuff that I've been through, I want to experience life.
Mm-hmm.
That may be different for you. It's definitely different for me. So I always tell my clients, because sometimes they're similar to law enforcement, first responders, and then they have this attachment, this association. So that's all they are. And I've tried to explain to people that's not who you are. That's a profession that you decided to go into that monetizes you for your time exchange. That's not who you are. Like, who are you? So I try to ask powerful questions, even to my friends, because they often, when they introduce themselves, like, I'm such and such, I do this. And I always say, why do you always find the need to introduce yourself as to this profession? If you're a doctor, my name is such and such, I'm a doctor, or I'm a trainer. And when I introduce myself, I never introduce myself as Joe the bodybuilder. I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not a trainer. I'm not a coach. I'm none of those things. But yet I'm also all of those things in part in different areas of my life, but I don't want to attach myself to one thing anymore. For many years, I attached myself to being a gang member. Look where it got me. And that's all I did. That's all I associated myself. I don't think it's appropriate to actually use what you said. So I'm none of those things, but yet I'm also all of those things.
I agree, man. It's so funny you mentioned that because I'd never really thought of it that way before. And hearing your perspective is fascinating. I have a tendency not to tell anybody what I do for a living. When I meet somebody new, my profession is something that they have to drag out of me. And I'm telling you why. I have a handful of reasons, but I'll tell you the top few. One is that when people realize what I do, conversations almost inevitably become coaching sessions. They want to know, am I eating the right thing? And it changes their behavior around me. Like they order things they normally wouldn't. For example, they'll order salad when they would have normally ordered fried chicken, right? And I don't want that. I want people to be themselves around me.
Yeah.
They start asking me a lot of fitness questions and the topics end up becoming, I feel like I'm back at work and I'm not in a social situation. And I understand why this happens. And I'm totally okay with it over time. And the reason it happens is because people are desperate for information, for knowledge. They want to know a path and they want to know a shortcut, of course. That's of course what they fucking want. But it's fascinating to people. People care about fitness and nutrition. They care about their behaviors for the most part. Most people do. And the moment they find out, I can't have any other conversation for a period of time until I get that out of the way. And I've just found that a little air of mystery in the beginning is a lot more fun, at least for me. You know?
Yeah.
But have you found yourself in that situation too, where you almost like, can we just get to know each other a little bit more before we have to like dive into what we do for a living, what our degrees are? Like, it feels artificial almost, right? Or is it artificial, or is it that people are just trying to find common ground and they don't know how to? We have no social skills anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a whole other topic with the social skills. A lot of younger people, even adults, their social skills are null and void to the point where there's no more eye contact. You shake somebody's hand, there's like no hard handshake. So we're definitely moving away from social norms because of the phone. Like everywhere I look, like everybody walks down the street with the phone in their face. Like the phones are an addiction. We think drugs and alcohol and nicotine is bad. I think the phones are moving on that platform where we need to talk more about phone addiction, how it's taken away from relationships, how it's taken away from social cues, how it's taken away from one-on-one training. I mean, a lot of times I see trainers on their phone more than they're actually with their client. It's disrespectful and offensive. I don't understand it. You want to talk about some uncomfortable social norms that I see from trainers? Let's start with that. There's a time and a place for it. And on the floor isn't one of them. Using your clients for marketing before you work with them for an X period of time, that's not appropriate either. Showing up late, I can go on and on a list of things that's not appropriate, but then I look at the same people that do that and I look at their business, and where their business is at isn't where mine is at. So why would I mimic those behaviors when you're nowhere even in the same realm?
I have one question for you because we've talked a lot about overcoming hardship. We've talked a lot about mistakes that were made and retribution, recovery, redemption. Like all of these things are really important because it's part of the human experience. But most people struggle. And you come from a position of authority because you've done all the bad shit. You've already been beat down. And when you were in the mud, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Last Samurai.
But yeah, I love that movie.
Man, it's one of my favorite movies. It's such an underrated movie. People like back in the day, people were always like, oh, I don't want to go watch a Tom Cruise movie where he's a ninja. I'm like, okay, first of all, he's not a ninja. He's not the last samurai. He's an American soldier who goes to help the Japanese Empire quell the rebellion of the samurai. But if you have not seen The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, it's a phenomenal, underrated movie. But the thing about him was his resilience. He did some terrible things, man. And he went to Japan, got his ass handed to him. He got his ass beat. But man, think about that scene in the rain where he was helping the little kid learn, he was doing the boken work. And then the main samurai came out, or the second main samurai came out and kicked his ass in front of everybody. And he just kept reaching for the stick in the rain. And he would not get down. He'd get beaten down again. He kept getting up, got beaten down, kept getting up. You've kind of gone through that. That's how I kind of envision how you've gone through things. You did some bad things. You repented and you worked really, really hard. And then you became basically somebody of extraordinary motivation. You have fundamentally changed who you are while still remembering who you were. And you're constantly managing the barrier that could break between those two people. And that is an endless battle. You will never be done, Joseph. That will forever, for the rest of your life. You're going to constantly be having to fight backwards. You're going to have to fight your old self every single time. It's never going to go away, buddy. That's just the way that human beings work. But here's the thing. Most people don't have that level of pain and suffering. Most people don't have to come back from that. So from your perspective of a man who's done nearly the impossible, and just for the general, like the mom and pa, like the average person who's out there is just struggling. People are just, man, they're unhappy. People are trying to lose body fat. It's hard out there. Like trying to figure out how do they navigate this food crap? Like between the federal government giving us poisonous food and the manufacturers, the crony capitalists that are in bed with the government to continue to do that, and the fads and the tricks and the social media nonsense and all of the crap that people have to deal with. What would you leave people with as a note of encouragement for everybody who's struggling, suffering, trying to figure it out? knowing that you have had way worse, what would you tell the people who are just normal? What mindset do they need to have in order to see success and have longevity?
I think one big one that I would want most of the people out there to have is I think we need to be better advocates for ourselves. So what I mean by that is even with these trainers that we talk about that aren't providing a good service, that's all it is. They're just not providing a good service. It's also the responsibility of the consumer to be a better advocate for themselves to say that this quality that I'm receiving is shit. So I think that if we advocate for ourselves better, we stop making excuses. We stop living in this delusional land that there's going to be a magical pill, although marketing will have us believe that this is all working. So when we advocate for ourselves, what does that mean? I advocated for myself in prison. I advocated for myself that I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew that I wanted better. And since we're on that topic, 17 years of my life was spent to crime. 17 years. I've only been out for 15 years. That means that I've done more bad than I've done good, if you want to look at it in that perspective. From the time I was 10, I wasn't incarcerated until about 12, but from 12 until I went to prison in another 12 straight years. So when we advocate, I didn't advocate for myself as that 10-year-old. When I was that 10-year-old boy, I didn't advocate for me. I wanted better when I was 12, when I was 13, 14, 15. I would want people to just be better advocates for themselves, realizing that there's a difference between marketing strategies so that they can sell us products and marketing dreams. And I'd want for people to advocate for themselves with social media. There's nothing wrong with social media, but it's how we use it and how we perceive it. Gimmicks, gadgets, filters. Like, I think we're too wrapped up into what we see is what we get. You see the Joker, so you associate the Joker to something different than what I do. So when we advocate for ourselves, we have a greater belief in ourselves. You can do anything that you want to in life, as long as you have some form of belief in yourself first and you advocate for yourself. And don't take no for an answer. There's going to be a lot of people out there that's going to have their own self-limiting beliefs and push that on you. So when you advocate for yourself, you kind of walk around with a shield and a sword. You shield all of the nonsense that people want to drown you with, marketing, fad diets, fad workouts, and then you have a sword so that you can actually defend yourself against all of these same people. So if we advocate for ourselves, that would be something that I would wish, because it covers a lot of areas.
I agree with you 100%. I think that the advocacy for oneself gets tied up where people feel like they go the wrong way. It goes more towards like a egocentrism, like more of a selfishness. That's not what you mean. Because what I'm hearing is, I'm hearing that you have to take responsibility for your behavior. You have to take responsibility for how you're being influenced and not allow those things. You have to shield yourself and you have to defend yourself. I love the fact that you talked about defense. You didn't talk about offense, because what are you going to do against the meta machine, the marketing machine? You remember that movie 300?
Oh yeah.
You just got to fight in the shade, dude. Like when those arrows come down, sometimes you just got to get the shield up and you just got to wait it out. And then you get back up and you clear it, right? Remember when Gerard Butler does that and he takes a spear and jams it down his shield and all the arrows fly off? That's a great movie. And that's what I heard from you when you were saying that. Did I catch that correctly? Did I interpret that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is, from a man who has a history of violence, that was the most passive means. And that shows real change. That shows growth. And that's what I think that I was really hoping to hear. It's so good because people are going to have the opportunity to say, you know what, I can do it too. I can shield myself from the nonsense. I can defend myself from the things that are trying to detract me, cut me down, make me feel inferior, whether it be because of my height, my weight, my age, my gender, my race, my economic status, where I live, all of that crap. Social media tries, or people on social media try to influence you to a line of thinking. And I just rebel against that. The other thing too, I was just going to mention, one of the things that I've always found interesting about the Joker as a character is that he's a nonconformist. What did Heath Ledger's Joker say when he started to burn the money? He's like, it's not about the money, it's about the principle. So this has been lovely, man. I really appreciate it. Any final words that you have for the folks out there?
Yeah, I think there's a difference, because even with myself for many years, I was living in this like no man's land, is what I like to call it. And I think true change comes from a necessity. Like, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in prison. That's a true necessity. It's not like I couldn't afford to buy coffee or like the luxuries. I didn't have the fanciest shoes. But if I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in prison, there was a necessity that happened. There was a switch that happened. And I think long-lasting change, because when I work with my clients, I don't teach them how to do a lat pull down or a squat. I try to impact their life, and I try to get them to change the way that they view their goals. This is a lifestyle. This isn't a seasonal change. I know that you got a wedding coming up, but what if I can take you past that to heights that you haven't even imagined? That's what I try to do, but that doesn't happen until they get out of this no man's land. I kind of want to do it. I don't know if I want to do it. long-lasting change comes out of necessity. Bottom line, it doesn't matter what you want to do. You're in a bad relationship, you're going to stay in this relationship because it's comfortable. You don't really know what's out there. It's the fear, these ideas that you had that you created in your own mind. When you get out of your own way and there's a necessity for change, that's when things happen.
Agreed. You're right. Sometimes, especially in the modern world, we're the one thing that can stand in our own way. Josif, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. It's been wonderful. I really appreciate your insight, your wisdom, your experience, and you taking the time out of your busy day. I know you're between clients when you do this. You're going to just do so many great things in this industry, and I can't wait to see your growth. And we're going to keep in touch, of course. And I would love to have you on again. We can have another conversation at some point here. But I know you got clients coming up. I can't thank you enough. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you again soon, my man.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say thank you for asking me to be on. And if my story resonates with people, I'm happy. I'm not going to resonate with everybody, and that's quite all right. But the people that I do resonate with, if I can impact them, then I feel like I've done what I was supposed to do.
It's all you can do.
Thank you.
All right, brother. Cheers. Keep it up, man. Don't quit.
All right. Thank you.
All right, buddy.